And we are ready.
Okay, so the tiers we're using are S, A, B, C, D, and F, right?
Yes, that would be it. Just for viewer
Yeah, I
clarity.
see one of you. You're one of those gross freaks who skips over E tier, I see.
For the very many people that have not seen the Dead Rising 2 video, would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm Zoe. I like buffalo wings. And the fog is coming. No,
that's a terrible. That joke died two years ago. Cut that shit out.
I'm Zoe. I like buffalo wings and Team Fortress 2 and tacos and burritos.
Is that it?
I like Team Fortress 2.
We're trying out a new kind of video, more or less. Setup's kind of jank, but the general idea is that we tackle a weapon, we discuss our opinions on it, and then live we'll be each ranking it on the standard issue sort of tier list. And to give this video idea a try, we are trying the scout weapons first, since I'm the scout man. I'm Scout TF2, John TF2 Scout.
Alright, so we're ready to start? We ready to start?
Yeah, alright, so let's just start. I have an idea. Pull up the TF2 wiki real quick and just pull up a list of scouts' weapons. We'll just tackle that bitch from top to bottom.
Alright, Alright, weapons are up.
Awesome, let's start with stock then. Stock scattergun.
Stock scattergun.
Alright, so this is just the best. This is like,
yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think the stock scattergun is just single-handedly, like, one of, if not the best stock weapon in the game, period. I firmly believe it is, like, the absolute best stock weapon because of its versatility and its raw damage, and also it's the only scout weapon that has 6 shots.
It's up to 100 damage per shot with a 6-shot magazine with like a good reload speed, good firing speed. It feels good to use. It has a lot of customization. I personally am going to be taking in like styles into account for these weapons because I'm stupid. It's just the best scout weapon, period. If you aren't at least kind of using this occasionally, you're doing yourself a disservice. This is like actually like peak. This is S tier for me.
So the next item on the wiki is the Force of Nature.
Would you like to open this one?
I'm gonna say that the Force of Nature sits for me at like a solid B tier because I think it's a really fun weapon to fuck around with, and it definitely does have certain scenarios where it's useful, but not nearly as many uses as, how do I say this? Every single other scout primary. You can only really get kills in, like, really close-up scenarios. You can only get kills properly in very specific scenarios consistently, like if your enemy is pinned up against a wall or right next to a cliff or something. It really struggles to secure kills, which I really do not like about it, but the sound design and, like, the satisfaction of getting kills with it and just the feeling of pinning people against walls with it, I feel makes up for it, as well as its, obvious utility of knocking people away from certain points and whatnot.
Yeah.
So, I would put it at a solid B tier, not particularly good, but decent, usable, not actively bad or mediocre, just good.
I feel like with the design of this weapon, I feel like it does really well on certain maps. Like, if you go to a map like Brazil or Hightower, Sawmill.
Yeah, if you're a bitch who plays Hightower.
I mean, who doesn't engage in a little bit of Hightower every now and then? I mean, come on.
I would rather blow my dick off with the Force of Nature than play on Hightower.
Oh, please. You've played it once or twice in the past, I'm sure.
Not willingly!
Oh,
I haven't played that shit willingly in like 4 years!
My brother in Christ, you clicked on the map. Okay, but alright. Hightower, getting rid of Hightower. I think that if you pick something like Shark Bay, for example, with map hazards and a solid point and an easily defendable kind of thing that you can throw people out away from, I think it can pretty easily bring the Force of Nature up to A tier. I'm locking in my vote, Force of Nature A tier. It's a fun weapon to use, it's satisfying, and depending on the map you use and play it on, it's actually like pretty good.
So the next item on the wiki is the shortstop.
I have to say, as I think looks can be deceiving, because you look at the shortstop, you think, oh, less damage, better spread, man, that's gonna be mediocre. But as I have, for an extended period of time, used this weapon before, and I have to say, it's a lot better than a lot of people think. The shove is useless. Let's just get that out of the way. The shove is pointless. What's the point of it? There is no point. Is dumb. But
Well, what if you don't own the force of nature?
well, I mean,
If you're the one person on the earth who has a shortstop but not the force of nature, and you're able to somehow get that close to the enemy and they're right up against a cliff.
I mean, yeah, it's not useless. But
What
it's
if you're
like,
in that what if you're in that exact specific scenario, huh?
I mean, I'm just saying. It's
Yeah,
not,
I got
it's
you
not,
stuttering. You don't know what to say because you know deep down that it is extremely useful for that exact scenario.
For that, yes, for that one exact scenario, yes, absolutely, I agree. For every other scenario, though, you might as well equip the force of nature. I like the shove. I think it's dumb and it's funny, but it's not like actively useful. But shove aside, let's be honest, the shove is kind of like whatever. Shove aside, up to 70 damage per shot. That's still pretty good. It's not 100, but it's really consistent. It fires faster. It has its whole magazine reload in one go. It's pretty good. I'm locking in A tier. I think it's a great side grade.
The shortstop, I think, is pretty decent. I do enjoy using it from time to time, but I don't know what it is. It's just like, it just doesn't feel good to use. But what I mean by it does not feel good to use is that, like, I don't know what it is, but even when I'm, like, using it completely viably, it just feels like it's harder to get kills with. Like, it's not even that I'm actually struggling. I'm doing good damage, I'm getting the kills, but I guess it's just a factor of, playing mid-range scout that it just does not feel like you're as effective for some reason.
That is true.
Every time I play shortstop, I can physically feel all of the kills that I could have gotten that I'm not getting. The shortstop compared to stock, while it does absolutely have its uses, and I do think it is good at what it is, I feel like the playstyle that it facilitates for scout simply is not generally viable enough, and it could benefit a lot from having other weapons that combo better with it. The shortstop is good at what it does. I enjoy it for what it does, but it is generally a worse option than the other scatterguns, as it is very niche, and the playstyle it facilitates doesn't quite work that well.
Alright, I want to do a counter argument real quick. I want to do it
So I'll
quick
put that in
because
B tier.
B tier, that's fair. I feel like if you're playing the shortstop as only a mid-range weapon, you are actively missing out on the potential that it has at close range, because while it definitely comes off as a sort of only use it mid-range kind of weapon, the increased fire rate and the up to 70 damage per shot, I think it's actually a really good bridge between the scattergun and the soda popper, which we'll get to in a second. The middle of the road stats allows this scout to have a decent amount of burst damage along with consistency. It's like a bar, because you have the scattergun for consistency, soda popper for burst damage, and the shortstop is in the middle. When you kind of start to realize that the shortstop can output some really good damage at close range, it becomes a really valuable weapon for those kinds of situations where sometimes you're not going to be at close range and you're going to be a little farther away, but you need a way to do more consistent damage that isn't the pistol. Maybe you have the milk or the guillotine with you, and you need some kind of range on your side.
I didn't even think I'd have that much to say about the shortstop. I don't even use it that much.
It's a very interesting weapon, soda popper.
The soda popper.
All right, so I can really quickly S tier. I can really quickly continue my discussion. The soda popper, like I said earlier, is basically on the other end of the spectrum when it comes to Scout's weapons, and in that fact, it's really good at burst damage. If you need a motherfucker that isn't a heavy on the ground now, the soda popper can do that. It's
like the it's like the force of nature from an alternate dimension where it got hose in high school.
it's basically like the force of nature's like cracked up little brother. It's like it's really good. Like if you want a motherfucker dead, you can kill that guy instantly.
The soda popper is actually my least used scout primary, I would say.
Really?
I do not use it. Yeah. So I don't really have too much to say, and my opinion would just be like blatantly incorrect. But I would say that it, if anything, is another B tier for me. Cause I would say that I would put it in B tier, and even though I don't use it as much as any other primary, actually, I would put it in a higher B tier than the Force of Nature and Shortstop, even though I don't use it as much as them, just because it is so much more effective at securing kills, and I feel as though its niches come up a lot more often than the other two. Because the Shortstop and the Force of Nature completely rely on, like, the way the enemy team is playing and what map you're playing on, and, like, just a bunch of surrounding factors, while the Soda Popper's niche is a lot more straightforward. Do you want the ability to fly, yes or no?
Yes, I didn't even mention the flying. The flying is... It literally got the weapon banned in a lot of comp leagues, so... It's
because comp players are little bitches who don't like fun, or the sharpened volcano fragment.
The fucking sharpened volcano fragment. That's gonna be, when we do this with the pyro, that's gonna be a fun topic.
Jarvis, cut to the picture of my genuine professional killstreak sharpened volcano fragment. So yeah, the soda popper I'll put at a high B tier above the Force of Nature and Shortstop. That's it, just my highest B tier so far. Is that everything you want to say about the soda popper?
Yeah. A lot of damage really fast, a lot of jumps, but the jumps kind of explain themselves. Yeah.
So the next scout weapon is my favorite, the Babyface's Blaster.
Ooh.
I fucking carried entire games with nothing but the Babyface's Blaster. I remember this one very vividly. I was playing Valve Comp because I'm a fucking dirty bastard, and I had the Babyface's Blaster. I was playing as Scout, and some guy was holding the server hostage, threatening to keep leaving and rejoining so that the timer kept resetting, unless everyone in the server paid him like a refine or some shit.
What?
So everyone started making fun of him, and he just got really embarrassed and left. So we could play the game finally, and then I forgot to mention it was Turbine.
Oh,
I
no.
don't know why the fuck Turbine is in the
the
competitive
fuck
map pool.
did they add Turbine?
If you have so much, I don't remember which YouTuber it was, but I think about this quote a lot. If you have ever so much as seen a top-down point of view of Turbine, you would know why it doesn't belong in competitive. But basically, and then I just took the Babyface's Blaster and capped all three intels just back to back and no one stopped me. And I think about that game a lot. The Babyface's Blaster suffers heavily from the same problems that you could say the Force of Nature suffers from, where it heavily relies on the way the enemy team is playing and the map you're playing on. Because if you're on the right map, like maps that don't have a whole lot of like vertical movement and are like really wide and open, but not like too wide and open, obviously. It is really, really good for just, like, wide maps that have, like, big fields, but still a fair amount of cover. It is insane in the right situations, so I would actually put the Babyface's Blaster in a good, decent A tier, because it is really, really fun. On the right maps, it is actually really useful, but it's a little bit too... a bit too punishing to be able to use in enough scenarios to rank it like any higher. So I would say it's like a low to mid A tier.
I feel like the Babyface's Blaster suffers less from a sort of niche problem and more of a skill problem. I have seen people demolish entire servers with this weapon. It is a weapon that rewards you for getting hits and dodging hits, and just basically perfecting scouts, like whole entire shtick of move fast, kill people. This is like the Sifu of guns. If you are not good at it, you are going to be destroyed. I feel like this is a very good weapon. However, I think its skill ceiling is insanely high. And if I were to make any kind of change to this, I think the only thing that I think would really need to be changed is for the boost loss to just be decreased by a good amount. So that the stray rocket doesn't totally punish you. You know?
Like, people way overblow how bad it actually is. It is not a bad weapon by any means. It's simply too punishing to the point where if you're not playing on, like, a map that's really forgiving for its playstyle, it's basically unusable. That is the only thing. It's just a bit too punishing, and that's all that it's missing.
I think if I had to rank this with the possible skill ceiling, but with its incredibly high skill floor, I'm gonna have to, just talking generally here, I'm gonna have to put it in B tier. I think if you are the kind of person willing to just hunker down and get really good at this weapon, it can and will pay off. But for the average Joe that's going to just kind of like pick it up and use it a bit, it's not super great.
Yeah, exactly. If you're a fucking grind millionaire Sigma Chad like me, you can easily put this in like A or S tier. But for the general public, I see why most people rank it like C or D, because they just simply don't have the swag levels that I do to actually use this properly.
Yeah. So, all right, we are locked in. Do we just have the backscatter?
Yep. A tier. Backscatter's the next weapon and final weapon in the primary category.
So I made a pretty good video on this weapon. I've made a good video on most of these weapons. I've got to finish the rest. But basically, I feel like the backscatter is ultimately, while handy and like, how do I put this? Its gimmick is kind of pointless. I feel like the mini crits that it provides only because the mini crit is only a 35% damage increase, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
It's not as useful as you would think. Because of the wider spread, it ultimately makes a lot of your shots, especially in like just casual servers, a lot more variable and erratic. And while I think that I think it's a kind of an interesting gun. I think it's funny because, you know, it looks like a penis and you can have backscatter, you know, like father, like son. I feel like ultimately, though, in practice, well, it's not
What was that one stupid fucking bit? Penis Scout? Foreskin
Penis
Scout
with the bombing run. But yeah, I think mine is the Penis Scout, which is pretty funny, even up to this day. I feel like ultimately this is kind of just Scout's weakest primary. It's not unusable. I think it's pretty solid. And if you want to use this, I think you won't be doing yourself too much of a disservice. But I don't think it really holds a candle to the rest of the primary. So I'm going to put it in C tier. It's usable, but it's not great.
I don't think you're gonna fucking believe what I'm about to say. If you play Scout as an ambush class, which if you're playing with something like the baby faces, the force of nature, even some people prefer to use the stock scattergun for this. The backscatter, I feel, is a quite viable option, as its downsides don't really mean much. And if I am correct on this, as I recall doing it several times, you can very, very easily one-shot light classes when you are behind them. So in other words, if you, say, really fucking hate snipers, like I do...
That is fair. I see where you're going with this.
So what I'm saying is, since its downsides don't really matter that much, and it obviously encourages an ambush style playthrough, which is how I play Scout, I think it is actually a pretty decent option that, similar to the Babyface's Blaster, has its downsides and mediocrity blown out of proportion, and is more so like a playstyle and situation thing rather than a fault of the weapon at a fundamental level. So, I see it as a very good option for killing snipers, other scouts that are distracted, even just any class who is distracted leaving spawn, which, yes, you can make the argument that, like, the stock scattergun is also really good at this.
Yeah.
But it's a lot funnier when they don't have a chance to even react.
That is funny. Yeah, that's true.
And it does a bit more damage, so, as I said, I'm pretty sure it can one-shot light classes, if I recall correctly. So
I believe it can, yes.
You literally just cannot react to it in certain scenarios. And what the fuck are they gonna do? Whine about the backscatter being overpowered? You can't whine about the backscatter being overpowered. You look like a little bitch.
I will say, though, I feel like, while that's definitely funny, I feel like its use cases are, like, if you think about this, there are 4 light classes in the game. You have Engineer, Scout, like, Sniper, and Spy. I feel like Sniper is definitely a pretty easy victim for this weapon because of just the stand-still nature of Sniper. But then there's Spy, which generally you don't really need to one-shot him because he's already such a weak class. And as long as you aren't, like, easily falling into his very easy fucking Matador stab, like the nerd he is and like the nerd you are,
I love staring at him. I love
staring at spies.
Having him stare into my cold, dead eyes as I just look at him, making fun of him for that yee-ass fucking Matador. Fucking that Aldi's ass trick stab.
Aldi's ass trick stab. But yeah, I feel like you don't really need to one-shot a spy. They're all kind of dumb, and you can just shoot them again. You won't... It's not like one of those things where you won't get a second chance.
Exactly,
like, yeah.
So...
But then there's Engineer and Scout. I feel like having this in a Scout v Scout is not super, like, favorable.
Because accuracy... Yeah,
accuracy matters a lot more, and you're probably not going to be facing... The Scout's probably not going to be facing away. Unless he's, like, running away, in which you're not going to be able to get max damage ramp up anyway. You're probably going to end up, like, getting outshined by a guy with the scattergun. And then there's Engineer, which, why are you fighting Engineer as Scout? Yeah.
I would actually put the backscatter in the highest point of B tier for now.
I should mention, now that we're at the end of the primaries, I'm coming from a lot of these weapon rankings as a sort of, like... I'm not even sure, like an Omni Rules kind of Scout? Like, I'm not really the kind of guy that's like, oh, I'm like this kind of Scout, or that kind, or this, or that, or whatever. I'm always kind of shifting roles wherever I'm needed. Sometimes I'm, you know, up in the front line with my team. Sometimes I'm, like, sneaking behind trying to ambush some people. Sometimes I'm just throwing Mad Milk trying to be supportive. I kind of, like, fill in the role as that is needed in order to
you like having fun.
Yeah.
Exactly. You like having fun, and you like having multiple skill sets so you can actually support your team. To anyone listening to this, if you consider yourself as, like, strictly a specific niche of a class, and I'm not talking about, like, a subclass, I'm talking, like, a specific role as a specific class, and that's what you consider your main. Like, not like, oh, I'm a good roamer soldier. No, I mean, like, you consider your main as roamer soldier. It's, like, the only thing you play. Your game probably looks like Donkey Kong N64, and I don't like you.
I really hate those motherfuckers that, like, they fucking bomb their game's graphics for those extra 3 frames. Treat yourself, for the love of God. Have a little fidelity.
Just pull up the Fallen Chungus comic. I'm multi-fandom, which means I like multiple things.
Motherfucker, that is a basic human, like, factor. You are not multi-fandom, you just like other things. I like multiple things.
Chad, is it
I'm
weird
not
to like multiple things?
Guys, fucking.
Chad, is it unusual and special to like multiple things at once?
In fairness,
But
a lot of
anyway.
the people that have that title are autistic as shit. I know
anyway.
because I am one of them. All right, yeah.
Okay, now we get to the secondaries. The first secondary listed on the wiki is the pistol, the stock pistol.
All right. Would you mind if I started this one?
Yeah, you definitely have a lot more to say.
I feel like while there are... Okay, I feel like I should start this by comparing the Scout's use of the pistol with the Engineer's. It is true that the Engineer has a lot more bullets. And that is definitely an upside, because you'll probably never run out of pistol bullets unless you're trying really hard on Engineer, or unless you've just lived like a long-ass time.
Listen, I've tried before. Even living a long-ass time wouldn't do it, because you're literally, as an Engineer, you're supposed to be constantly picking up ammo to play your fucking role. Yeah. But, like, I have tried before to deliberately run out of ammo. It legit, I think, takes, like, a full, like, 2 minutes never
firing.
letting go of... Yeah, never letting go of your pistol, constantly holding your mouse button down for like 2 straight minutes to run out of ammo. I feel like the Engineer pistol and the Scout pistol are not comparable at all, because even though they are the same exact weapon with the same exact stats minus the ammo pool, they serve very, very different functions. As Scout's pistol is basically for like softening up enemies before attacking them, picking off enemies that are just out of reach, like, you know, maybe picking off a sentry gun that's unattended real quick so you can not have your entire playthrough just disabled.
Yeah,
While Engineer's pistol, on the other hand, is a lot more focused on just kind of scaring off targets that are out of your sentry gun's range.
I feel like... I'm just gonna get my ranking locked in right now. I think the pistol is an S tier. Primarily, hear me out. I was like, this isn't like the most insane opinion, but it's kind of like a little rough. I think that the pistol is the perfect Swiss Army knife for Scout. As a primarily close range class, you want a weapon that is going to give you options. The pistol allows you to do long range peppering and allows you to take out sentry guns from a distance, like you said. Basically, like, have a chance at not countering, but like dealing with the Scout's basic counter. It's not only is it basically like a mini SMG, because it has fast fire rate, good damage, you know, a lot of bullets. It does like a good amount of damage. If you're in close range, if you want like a panic button, this thing can output like 20 damage shots at close range. It's like not an ignorable amount of damage. This thing has saved my life. It's saved my life so many times. I don't think that... I will say, though, the ammo count is definitely a bit of a downside, but if you utilize the Scout's mobility to continue picking up ammo boxes, as long as there's not an Engineer nearby, because don't be a dick, I think that it won't be as noticeable. And besides, I feel like you generally won't necessarily be running out of ammo too often, because you'll be mainly using your primary.
Yeah, as you said, I feel as though the Scout stats are the main thing that result in the pistol playing so different from Engineer's pistol.
Yeah.
Because Scout has a much more aggressive playstyle, even though they have the same health and the same weapon with the same stats, albeit different ammo pools. The purpose of those weapons and the use they have is completely different due to surrounding factors such as the character stats, because even though they have the same health, Scout's extra speed, ability to double jump, and just general aggressive roll, just his general aggression, makes the pistol a weapon much more suited for killing rather than the utility it serves as Engineer. It just kind of serves as a softening tool to make your shotgun better, while for the Scout, you can actually expect to get genuine kills with it. Back to Scout, since we are focused on Scout in this case, I feel as though it is an aggressive tool that does have a lot of use that the scattergun and all of Scout's other weapons simply do not have. All of his pistol side grades are for utility rather than being different pistols, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, due to it being the only thing in its category, I would have to put it in a low A instead of a high B. The next weapon on the wiki is the
Bonk.
Bonk Atomic Punch.
Do you want to open this one?
It's... People exaggerate how bad it is because it definitely does have some uses. I, for one, really like just distracting the entire enemy team. It makes it really easy on, like, other maps to pop a bonk, run behind everyone's backlines, and then just spawn camp, which is a very, very dick move. But it's also very, very funny.
It is. I will say that the Bonk Atomic
As long as you're not on the receiving end.
As long as I feel like the Bonk Atomic Punch is a very funny meme weapon, but with how it actually plays out when you're playing seriously, it suffers a bit. There is the fact that you are taking up the slot of something like the pistol or the Mad Milk or any other kind of like scout weapon, even the Critical
Or, you know, literally anything else that goes in the secondary slot.
Because there's just kind of the reality that the Bonk Atomic Punch is just kind of niche, because all it really does is it gives you 8 seconds of invincibility, but you can't do anything while invincible, and if you get shot a bunch while you're in it, which is you're probably going to be, doing that, you're going to be slowed. It's kind of it's a distraction weapon more than anything. It's the kind of weapon you would use. You would never use this in an actual serious situation. I think that despite it being a very iconic weapon for Scout, when it comes to actually using it, it's jokes and nothing really much else, minus the occasional sentry that you want to soak up bullets from. So I'm going to probably put this in D tier.
The slow effect after the invincibility wears off is really, really shitty, because on many, many maps, you don't realize how, like, little hiding places there are, and how narrow a lot of the maps in TF2 are, until you're about to run out of until your bonk is about to run out, and you need to find a place to hide while the slowdown effect wears off. Because people will just chase you and wait there. It has a similar problem to the Flog, where yes, you're invincible, but you're very easy to camp when the invincibility wears off.
Yeah.
Because, the Flog requires you to stand still while invincible, and Bonk makes you almost completely stand still when the invincibility wears off.
Yeah.
So I feel as though its downsides work against it, and as you mentioned, it has very niche uses. So I would put it in C tier because the situations it's useful just don't come up enough, because I completely forgot to mention, but the things that it makes Scout good at, Scout is already good at. Criticola.
Okay, so I feel like we should probably have this one be kind of quicker, just so we can...
It's a very simple weapon, there isn't much to say, so...
I feel like, as a quick note, there's a psychological factor with it, because you are more vulnerable when using it, which, if you are not, like, at the top of your dodging game, it can make it hard to use. But I feel like if you can dodge and you can aim good, I'm going to put this in a C tier, because you are still missing out on Scout's other secondaries, but I feel like it's a pretty solid choice. It's fine, it works. You can use it.
I would put it in a high C as well, because I feel like the 35 extra damage Scout takes is not equivalent to the extra 35 damage that Scout will do.
Yeah.
And Scout also has many weapons that benefit, like... And by many, I mean he has, two or three... Sorry, 4. He has 4, I think. No, wait, the Sun on a Stick does full crits. It's just so shit that it feels like mini crits. But point is, if you use the Criticola, you are taking extra damage and also completely negating the upside of the Backscatter, the Fan of War, one of the upsides of the Atomizer that no one ever uses. But point is, the extra damage that you do can be done already with other weapons, and it simply... The damage you are taking is not worth the damage you're going to be doing.
Alright, next weapon. Mad Milk.
Mad Milk!
Relatively simple weapon. I'm putting this shit in S tier right away because it is basically the support weapon for Scout. It can demolish teams if you have, like, a team that can aim. Because it's basically just deal damage to that guy, you will get health back.
Man, I can't lie. I've done unspeakable things to repay Scouts for using critical, not fucking critical. I've done unspeakable things to repay Scouts that use Mad Milk whenever I was playing Heavy, man. It is... Oh, it's so good. I would put the Mad Milk in the top of A tier, because there's still debate to be had over what secondary you're bringing, rather than just, oh, I don't know what to use for secondary. Time to equip Mad Milk. No, there's still, like, debate to be had as to what secondary you should use, instead of just always equipping Mad Milk. So it isn't an S tier, I guess you could say, but I would say that it is an amazing weapon that allows Scout to not be an asshole and properly support his team.
Yeah.
It is not... Its healing isn't frustrating to fight against, even though it's really good, and the healing applies to your entire team. Who doesn't like a healer?
I will say...
So top of A tier.
I will say before we move on, I made a point in my Mad Milk video that I made a bit ago. I don't like Scouts that use this just for their own healing sake. I feel like that's just not using the weapon to its, like, potential. I don't like Scouts that just go behind enemy lines, get cornered by a heavy, and then just throw the milk and then barely survive with 1 health because they had to basically use the milk as a crutch.
It's like the same mentality that Blutsauger medics have.
Yes, basically.
I can heal myself, so I don't need my team.
Yeah, more or less. Alright, next one.
Winger.
Winger. I feel like this is a very... It's not a bad weapon. It's not like a super amazing weapon. It's added mobility for a decent cost, but is still a decent weapon. Not as good as necessarily the pistol or the pocket pistol, but I feel like if you want a middle ground between added mobility and damage dealing, I think this is a solid choice. And also, it gets extra points because it's paintable, so I'm putting it high B tier.
I remember when I was a wee sperm, I really wanted the Winger just for the ability to do... Just because it did more damage than stock bullets. That was the only reason I wanted it.
Yeah.
And, you know, I read stats, I read 25% extra damage, and I immediately assumed it was a combat weapon, and was like, man, that's so cool. I wanna be a cool badass scout doing 25% extra damage with my secondary equipped. But basically, I think people massively overplay how good the Winger's mobility is.
That is
because
true.
it is true that it makes you a lot better with vertical mobility. Let's be realistic for a second. How many scenarios are you playing Scout in which your double jump is not enough? Because I am going to say, I played Scout competitively for a while, I believe, actually. I played Scout very aggressively, very sweaty, and there are very, very few scenarios I have ever been in which my vertical mobility was just not enough because there was a ledge that I wanted to get onto that I could get onto that was too high that I could not use another ledge to get onto that I could not use my double jump on said ledge to get up to. So I would say that the Winger is a high C to a low B. I'm gonna put it in a low B because it still is useful in some situations. Because I won't deny that extra vertical mobility definitely is useful in many scenarios, but it's not game-changing. The next weapon is the Pretty Boy's Pocket Pistol, which I did mention earlier and talked about how, even though many people consider it to be a straight upgrade to the stock pistol, its upside of extra firing speed. Yeah, the firing speed works against it. Because even though it helps you regain health really fast, and of course, like, make up for the DPS of less bullets with being able to do that damage faster. It simply does not have a lot of ammo at all because it has less bullets in your mag. It has less bullets in your mag, and you shoot those bullets faster. So, and you know, you're a scout main. You're a scout main. You know how scouts use pistols.
I know.
They are not aiming that shit.
They are not
aiming that precisely.
It is. Trust me. As a scout main, as a guy that basically does this as I want to say a job, but I'm not making any money off this yet. There's just something about scouts using pistols because a lot of us basically just kind of spray and pray at times. But I will say, I think while it's I know I'm putting a lot of stuff in S tier, but I feel like this
has a very strong arsenal.
He really does. I think that this is the perfect balance between the Mad Milk and the pocket pistol. Not the pocket pistol, the regular pistol. The pocket pistol is the middle one, not the pistol. The pistol, Mad Milk, and the middle is pocket pistol. They're named similarly. I'm calling them similar things. I feel like while the fundamentals of the pocket pistol makes it a little harder to use than the regular pistol, the slower shots of the regular pistol allow you to kind of aim your shots a little more while wasting less bullets so that you have a more consistent amount of damage that you can output. The pocket pistol is very that's very like a sneeze of bullets. But I feel like the healing is very good for this kind of scouts that want a damaging side grade, but also want the get out of jail free card for like the Mad Milk can offer the scout. It's pretty much like the perfect middle point for that, and because of that, I'm putting it in S tier. I think it's just I've found it most. Wait, actually, I'm a dick. I cut you off. Hold on. Finish your sentence. It's a very good weapon. I think it's deserving of being an S tier.
As I said, people drastically overestimate how good it is over the pistol, but that by no means makes it a bad or worse weapon than the pistol. I would say that it's definitely a worthy side grade to the pistol. So I would say that the Blutsauger goes, I would say A tier, right above the stock pistol.
That's fair.
I do think that I do feel like it is more useful than the stock pistol in most scenarios, but if you are a damage-focused scout, you should not be using it because of how poor the ammo economy is.
And the final secondary is the Flying Guillotine. I used to use this religiously when I was a wee lad, and I have to say, while it's definitely not the best secondary, obviously there's 3 secondaries in S tier. I mean, come on. I feel like this is a very fun and effective burst damage weapon, and I feel like this can pair very well with something like the Force of Nature or Soda Popper. How much damage does this do? Like 50 damage plus the bleed. So like, the bleed's not super impactful, but the initial damage is actually like really good.
Yeah, it does a base of 50 damage and a crit of 150, and it has 8 seconds of bleed.
It is pretty good.
I'm fucking stupid. No, it has 8 damage per second for 5 seconds. 5 seconds of bleed.
Yeah. I'm not going to include the bleed damage because I'm not fucking Grouch, because I don't think bleed is as good as he really thinks it is. I feel like bleed in general is not super useful, but it's a nice like cherry on top. But just the 50 damage alone is really good. And then you add the bleed on top of that, and then I think it's really good.
I think the bleed is very useful because of how high it is. It is 8 damage a second, which is double. That's double the amount of damage Pyro Afterburn does. I think that the Flying Guillotine, especially paired with the Rap Assassin, I religiously use it with the Rap Assassin because of how high you can make the overtime damage. And not to brag or anything, but I used the Flava combo before Soundsmith, and I want reparations. I also appear in one of the Flava videos. I appear, I have a little cameo, and by little cameo, I mean I happen to be in the same server while he was recording.
Huh. Well, what do you know? Lore. Anyway, I'm going to put the Flying Guillotine in A tier. I think it's just really solid. I think it's really great.
I think I would put it in S, because the Flying Guillotine is through and through a combo weapon. It is meant to be paired with other items, and with the right pairs, it is a legendary weapon. It is amazing. I love the Flying Guillotine. S tier.
It is a very fun weapon. Now, on to the melee weapons.
Alright, the final 8 weapons. So the first melee weapon listed on the wiki is the stock bat.
Can I open with this one?
Yes.
Give me some time because I want to ramble a bit. I'm going to put this in either A or S tier. I'm going to make up my mind as I speak, but I have an explanation.
Alright, buddy.
Hold on a second. Give me a fucking second. When it comes to the stock weapons of TF2, they serve the primary function of being backup weapons. If you need a quick amount of damage, like now, like you're in the corner, you have nowhere else to go, your magazines are empty, you have to do something, you're going to pull out a melee weapon, and you're gonna try and, melee the enemy. I feel like with the stock bat, I think it has garnered a reputation as being useless. I disagree. When it comes to the damage of a usual stock weapon, it's usually around, like 1 swing a second for, 65 damage? The stock bat is twice that firing speed, but at 35 damage. But when it comes to the overall DPS, you are actually doing 5+ damage overall. It's not like super huge or anything, but it's just a fun thing that I enjoy about the stock bat, that it's kind of just better if you can hit your shots.
It actually shreds in the right scenarios, because I find it really funny how basically everyone talks about how shit the stock bat is because it's useless. But then when it comes to the holy mackerel, the funny meme weapon we all use. Yeah, let me just clear an entire server with a fucking fish real quick that has stats identical to the stock bat.
Yeah, I
love the fish and hate the stock bat, even though they have the same stats, and I use the fish all the time and get kills just fine with it. But, it has nothing to do with the humor. The stock bat's just objectively worse, even though it has the same stat.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
That's why that's another point I wanted to make real quick, is the reskins. Because I think while the stock bat is definitely good, it's a little bland when it comes to its aesthetics. Which is why when you use something like the sign or the fish or the pan or some kind of other reskin available to you, even like the arm or whatever, it really does just become a really solid backup weapon.
Scout does not have to do the split-second decision-making of, fuck, do I commit to repeatedly holding down my melee button, or do I try to quickly switch weapons? What's the better situation? What's the better option in this situation? He doesn't have to think about that because of how fast he is and how fast he swings. He can just keep going until one of them dies without needing to actually consider that. Because more than likely, if you were in a scenario where you are swinging your bat repeatedly like that in the first place, it was the only thing you had available anyway. And probably is the best thing to stick to in that situation if you made it there. And I never actually thought about it until now about how useful the stock bat really is in terms of utility. Because, as I said, Scout's ammo economy is very, how do I put this politely? Fucked up. His pistol has borderline no ammo in it. And all of his primary weapons take forever to reload because all of them have an ammo penalty. Basically what I'm saying is he is the only class that is not a backliner like a sniper or engineer or whatever you want to count as a support or backliner class. He is the only frontline power class that actually gets use out of his melee weapon as a melee weapon.
Yes. I love the stock bat. It is going in S tier for me. I've made that decision.
I'm gonna put it above the Force of Nature for its consistency. So yeah, no, the Sandman I would put in D tier because I do not consider it I do not think that it is as bad as people say.
Okay, yeah,
You'll notice that's a trend. You will notice that's a trend. I don't really think Scout has any explicitly bad weapons except for that one.
Yeah.
You know the one.
Yeah, I know the one.
But other than that fucked up homunculus child, I think that Scout does not have any explicitly terrible weapons. I find the slowdown effect just useful enough for securing kills on other scouts. If you're able to hit another scout with it, you just fuck them because scouts are not used to not having full speed.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people bitch and moan about how, oh, but you could negate the entire downside. You could negate the entire, like, point of the Sandman if you, like, fucking strafe or whatever and, like, fucking have sex with Saxon Hale.
Can I just say something real quick about the penalty?
Look me in the eyes right now and tell me a single time you, one of your friends, or an enemy that you have witnessed get slowed down and their first instinct was to start strafing repeatedly to negate the fucking movement speed penalty. You have never seen that happen. That has never happened ever in the history of ever. In the top 5 things that never happened, I would say number 1 is someone doing that to negate the Sandman's downside, and number 2 would probably be Ninja's wife walking into his room completely unannounced topless with a sandwich or whatever the fuck he said. But anyway, I would still say that it's D tier because even though it is very useful for fucking over other scouts, that is too niche of a use to put it any higher because it's the same issue that the Darwin's Danger Shield has, for instance, where it basically exists with the sole purpose of fucking over one class in one scenario.
And the other, it really can't do anything else, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I do want to say something.
Technically, cause it's the same thing where both of them technically can be used for things other than the one class they're useful against in that one scenario that you'll be up against them in. Have you ever stopped a rocket jumping soldier with the Sandman, and have you ever gotten your life saved by surviving a cow mangler shot because the afterburn was prevented with the Darwin's Danger Shield? No, you haven't. That never happened. So, D tier. Too niche.
I feel like, personally,
too niche and underwhelming.
In my personal experience, I have actually found that the health penalty of the Sandman, though it is definitely a factor, is not actually that bad. Because primarily, it's all about damage thresholds. Generally, outside of weapons that can already, like, insta-kill the scout, like the direct hit, the weapons that can allow the scout to be insta-killed with the Sandman is not actually that many. Because it's only, like, 15 less health, but if you compare it to something like the Big Earner or the Kunai, it's a much bigger health penalty, and ultimately it lets you get killed a lot easier by a lot of things. It definitely lets the scout get kind of a shit ran by things like sentries a little faster, but generally you're not really trying to run into sentries on purpose, so that's not like a super big factor. The health penalty is kind of one of those things where it seems intimidating, but when you're actually using it, while it definitely can screw you over in a good amount of situations, it is definitely workable, especially for a class that is very focused on dodging.
I really fucking hate the way people talk about health in TF2, because, like, everyone constantly talks about how, like, oh, TF2 is all about these split-second decisions, how 1 HP can make the difference, but Scout's immune to that. Scout's good at any health. It's great. Scout's the only class that can work. Scout's the only class that can work top tier without max health. He's so good at that.
They're not wrong, but that kind of applies to every class.
Yeah, and then you're like, okay, if Scout's so good, and if Scout's so good at dodging that he doesn't have to, like, care that much much about his health if you're good at dodging. Can you play the game with 15 less HP? No. No, I cannot.
Yeah, that's
unplayable.
I actually...
So yeah, no, I really think the penalty of less than 15 health is basically not bad at all, considering Scout speed, because if you're playing Scout right, that 15 less HP should not mean shit to you. That 15 extra HP should just be like a safety net, basically.
Yeah.
Like, Scout's entire thing is dodging, and this makes it slightly easier to kill enemies that are also good at dodging, but outside of that is just kind of a worse stock bat, so D tier.
Yeah, I personally, I have, with everything sort of included, I will say that I actually... I do like the Sandman. I put it in F initially because it's like a shitpost, but I will have to put it in a low B tier for one reason.
Little thing.
One reason. It is a wonderfully looking melee weapon. It is a beautifully modeled weapon. It is a simple but wonderful looking baseball bat.
I really, really, really like the sound design of the Sandman. It makes a really satisfying thunk noise.
Yes.
Like, sometimes I equip it just to smack walls repeatedly because the sound it makes is so satisfying.
I like to juggle the ball against the wall and spawn. You ever do that where you hold down the ball thing against the wall? It's fun. Yeah, honestly,
and then he just repeatedly says, "I love my balls. I love my balls. I love my balls.
There's my balls. There's my ball. It is my ball." Yeah, no, I really do like the Sandman, even though it isn't really that amazing of a weapon. I have a soft spot for it. Alright, next weapon?
The next weapon on the wiki is the Candy Cane!
Okay, you want to open with this one?
Yeah, go ahead. I don't use the Candy Cane much, but I definitely have stuff to say.
I will say, while the Candy Cane's upside definitely sounds interesting, and it can be pretty cool, the downside of basically being one hit most of the times by
the only two explosive classes in the game instantly die from being looked at in the direction of the most common class in the game.
It's not worth it. There are already enough medkits around the map. You just need to memorize where they are and go find them. You are a scout, you are fast, you can just do that. The extra 25 health from a small health kit is not gonna offset the punishment of being one hit. Also, it's kind of just ugly. It doesn't really pair with any kind of aesthetic loadout. It's fucking Candy Cane.
You don't want to use the Christmas swap we get every year? It's like the only thing that it matches with.
I really don't understand.
You don't want to put Scout in an elf hat and spread Christmas joy to all the little kids playing TF2?
Well, I mean, I like the elf cosmetics for Scout, but then you have things like the fucking... I don't even know what, but the ugly fucking...
You don't want to give all the happy children... You don't want to give all the jolly children on TF2 your big stick.
Well, I mean,
that's candy stick. You don't want to give them that.
That's like what the Rap Assassin does, though, because it's a festive melee weapon, but it's actually good. Yes.
I think it has a really interesting idea, but in execution, it's one of those weapons like the eviction notice and whatnot, where all of the stats work against each other.
Yeah.
Like, the eviction notice rewards you for getting hits with it, but punishes you for using it. It makes getting hits with it harder by draining your health, and it makes getting hits with it less rewarding by doing less damage. However, the reward comes from hitting people. Similarly, the Candy Cane rewards you with survivability, and its downside is hindering your survivability. What's the fucking point?
There is no point. The Candy Cane is it's like a Sisyphean task using it. There is just no reason to use it.
I'm gonna put it in D tier below the Sandman, because I think that I think that there are some very niche scenarios where it's useful, and by very niche scenarios, I mean servers that primarily consist of scouts.
Yeah.
And not a lot of soldiers.
It
because
is technically
Demomen,
a straight
I feel,
upgrade if you are playing on a server without demos or soldiers, but that is basically impossible.
Yeah, but like if you're playing on a server that has very few explosive classes, I feel as though it is definitely useful if the enemy team primarily consists of scouts and pyros and whatnot, especially pyros. It is very good for pyros. I forgot to consider that. But yes, it is very good against pyros because it allows you to immediately negate afterburn after killing someone. Okay, sorry, I'm back.
Welcome back.
I got a cheeseburger. Ooh. Anyway, but yeah, no. Scout is so based on like his surroundings and his own personal skill. Like, Scout is so vulnerable to the elements surrounding him that he needs to change his loadout significantly more than someone like Pyro or Demo Man or Soldier or even Heavy or Engineer would have to. So the word niche, that's I've been fucking overusing it, but that's just what Scout is. Despite him being a generalist, a lot of his weapons are specialty weapons, I feel.
Yeah.
So anyway, the next weapon on the list is the Boston Basher. I will be putting the Boston Basher in B tier right next to the stock bat, but I will be giving it the edge here, because I feel like in most situations, it is slightly, if you know how to use it, it is slightly better than the stock bat. The stock bat, compared to the Boston Basher, has the ability to just never let go of left click. But what the Boston Basher loses in safety, it makes up for in damage, obviously, because of the extra bleed. And if you, for some reason, need to set yourself to 1 HP, if you hit yourself twice with the Boston Basher really quick and then let the bleed go all the way through, it will do just enough damage to leave you at 1 HP. If you needed that for whatever reason. But it also has very good utility with being able to build Uber, and is generally just good, because, again, you lose the safety of being able to just hold down left click and not need to think about it, that the stock bat has, but it has a couple abilities that it's better at than the stock bat, and some things that it can do that the stock bat can't do. I would consider it a side grade that has the slight edge due to having more utility.
Yeah. I personally am probably going to end up giving it a bit more credit. When it comes to its usage, I think it's another S tier. I'm putting a lot of weapons in S tier, but that's just kind of like my general conclusion. When it comes to the power of the bleed, it's not like overpowered or anything. Again, not fucking Grouch. I'm not that idiot. I'm not that stupid. But if you can slow yourself down, and when you know you can go for a hit, you go for the hit, you hit that hit, it is rewarding. And if you can keep hitting those hits over and over again, it can be, like, actually pretty effective. You're just constantly resetting that bleed, constantly getting in those hits. And then there's the utility side of it being a really good way to hit damage yourself for medic Uber. It's another really good supportive tool for your team, because you can directly make sure that your team can get an Uber by just teaming up with your medic.
The things you can do with the Boston Basher compared to the stock bat are actually game changing. And I feel like it is one of the very, very few situations where a scout's weapon can completely make or break a game. Because I feel like scouts, even though Scout is heavily dependent on the weapons he's using, because a lot of his weapons serve specific niches, I feel like the Mad Milk and the Boston Basher are probably the only situations where you can completely change the tide of a game just by having them equipped.
Yeah. The
next weapon on the list is the Sun on a Stick.
I What's the resistance? What's the resistance buff? When does it activate?
It's 25% damage resistance, but only while the weapon is equipped.
F tier. Okay. Here's the thing.
So,
just real quick.
So in other words, if you got set on fire by a pyro, I'm gonna assume that you're outside of their effective range by this point, and you are not actively taking damage. Because if you are still in the radius by this point, you're dead. It is as simple as that. If a scout does not get out of a pyro's effective range immediately, he's fucking dead.
Pyros are hell.
I'm going to be accounting for afterburn here. So let's put this into very simple terms, very simple math terms. 25% of 4 is 1. In other words, if you have the sun on a stick equipped, and you just got set on fire, and you immediately escaped from the pyro's effective range, and your first instinct is to pull out your melee weapon for some fucking reason instead of keeping your primary equipped for protection in case you run into anyone on your way to a medkit, you will be drastically helping save your life by saving 1 HP. You take 1 less damage per second. You would think this would work really well with the degreaser, but no, the degreaser just doesn't have any effect with this.
It's dumb. It's dumb. There's no point in using this weapon. It's a joke weapon. It
would be really funny if it just completely negated the afterburn of the degreaser because the degreaser does 1 damage. But like, no, it doesn't even do that. It turns your pyro afterburn from 4 to 3. Unless you somehow immediately did the math in your head fucking instantly as to how much health you were going to have if that afterburn didn't went all the way through, and you conveniently not only did that math that fast, but also had the sun on a stick in your inventory, and there's no other enemies around, and you have confirmed that the amount of damage you would take before you can get to a medkit would be just enough to kill you, but you would be able to save just enough HP by holding out the sun on a... That's not fucking happening. I'm gonna stop that hypothetical. It's not happening. That never happened in the history of things that have never happened in the history of ever.
No reason
I lied about the thing with Ninja. This is the second most thing that never happened ever.
This is useless. There is no point in the sun on assist. The sun on assist.
F tier.
F tier.
Now I actually have a very smart rebalance idea for it though that I haven't quite shared with anyone. So the damage for it is already really low. It's 25% less damage. I'm aware of that, but it does crit on burning targets. So I think we should actually decrease the 25% damage to 80% damage. But hear me out. And then we remove the crits. We remove the damage resistance, and I know it sounds like I'm shitposting, but no, hear me out on this. Hear me out on this. So it has all the stats are different except 80% less damage, and then we also I know you're gonna lose your fucking mind when I say this.
Say this.
Please stick with me.
Stop.
Just hear me out, okay?
Stop.
Hear me out. Hear me out.
I'm trying.
80% less damage. 50% more vulnerability from bullets when equipped, but when you hit someone with it, it does 10 seconds of bleed. Buffed.
Hey, we're gonna make the next rebounds video, and it's going to be actually like the worst fucking thing ever put on YouTube. We're gonna be like put in the fucking chambers.
Every single weapon causes bleed.
The Executor does 8
every
seconds
single
of
weapon,
bleed.
Every single weapon in the game has 0 base damage, but does bleed.
God. Alright, next weapon.
The next weapon is the Fan of War.
Alright, I feel like ultimately if you're going to try and aim for mini crits, you just use the Criticola. I feel like I'm putting it in D tier. This is just kind of a mediocre weapon.
I will be putting it above the Criticola, actually.
Really?
And the reason for this is I feel as though it is very... You're not going to believe what I'm about to say.
Say it with me. It's very niche. Niche, yeah. Can you say niche?
But I feel as though it strives really well against heavies. It is really good against 1v1s with heavies, because I feel as though it allows you to shred them faster, and if you are not certain you'll be able to kill a heavy, I think it's a safety net for people who aren't very good at 1v1ing heavies, and what I mean by that is it allows you to do extra damage per shot, and, you know, let's be realistic here, if you're a scout going into 1v1 a heavy, you're catching them while they're off guard.
Yeah.
No scout is charging a heavy raw dog style. But anyway, as I was saying, it helps your team finish off what you started, and if you're not fully confident in your ability to take on a heavy 1v1, you can quickly whack them with a Fan of War, try your best, and if you die, your team can easily finish them off because they're marked for death.
Yeah.
So, losing out on a melee slot for Scout is not that big of a deal. So I feel as though the Fan of War is a completely fine choice for doing extra damage and taking out key targets.
Alright, next weapon.
Atomizer.
Okay, I'm just gonna front load this weapon. As much as I understand why people like this weapon, I find using it can be like pulling teeth. It is a weapon that is actively a lot more difficult to use as an actual weapon. Its mobility is harder to utilize for the reward given, and I feel like the minus 15% player damage, but also mini crits when airborne, I think it just clutters the fuck out of the stats list. I hate it.
No, that it's useless, honestly. Let's run this down real quick. So 50% less damage, why specifically against players? Why is it not just do less damage in general? That it already has a deploy penalty, which I feel like already handles the damage penalty just fine. Why does it mini crit against fucking targets while you're airborne? What's the fucking point? At that, what? I don't get it. I'm scared. I want to go home.
Yeah,
I don't like this weapon. I don't like it.
Hey,
I get this as a utility and not a weapon, but why would you fucking give it weapon stats that I don't get it?
The thing about the Atomizer for me is not just the fact that it's like that, it's also the fact it is a very hard weapon to use because it takes a full second to deploy, and that triple jump that it's supposed to give you only activates when it's fully deployed.
It only activates when you're deployed? I thought it still worked while you were in the middle of deploying it.
I swear to God, maybe it's a bug on my end, but you have to have it out all of the way.
I swear I remember using it while it was mid-deploy, but oh my god.
I swear to God, maybe I was having a weird game glitch.
We'll have to experiment with that later.
Yes, but I swear to God, it takes a full second to deploy, and you need to wait for it to fully deploy to use the triple jump.
Now, I know I said that... okay, first of all, I want to just get this out of the way by saying the Atomizer is, probably tied with the Soda Popper as my least used scout weapon, but I think I've used the Soda Popper mildly more than the Atomizer, so I think the Atomizer might be my actual, like, #1 least used scout weapon. But pretty much, I know that I said earlier that the Winger is pretty much just, the Atomizer if it took up a more important slot. Truth is, I don't think the Atomizer's that good either.
Yeah. I feel like it's very overrated.
People, I feel, just generally drastically overrate the usefulness of vertical mobility on Scout. So I would put it at the top of D tier, above the Sandman, but below C tier with the low C tier. So in between the Bonk Atomic Punch and the Sandman.
I'm kind of scared to put it any lower than low C tier because I know that a lot of people really like this weapon, so I'm going to give it a little bit of slack. But personally, if it were up to me, Like if this list was not objective, I'd probably be putting it in like D if not F. I just do not like using this weapon. It's impossible to use as a melee weapon. It's not great as a mobility tool. Just use the winger. And then as the final weapon
is the Rap Assassin. The Rap Assassin is probably my most used scout weapon, period. I will be putting it... I really want to put it in S tier with the Flying Guillotine, but I think I'll just have to put it at the top of A tier, because the sacrifice it makes is a lot bigger than the Flying Guillotine sacrifice, because beating people to death with a cardboard tube is apparently not as effective as a metal bat, compared to throwing a cleaver at someone compared to shooting them with a pistol. I feel as though although it gets the same thing done, and combos really well because it doubles your bleed damage, it just simply makes a bigger sacrifice, but allows you to keep your pistol though, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not sure where to put this, honestly. Like, it's not very good at all as like a melee weapon, but its ball is pretty handy. I might put this in B tier. I'm gonna put it in B tier because while I think it's a pretty damn good melee weapon, let's do like there. I think it's a A tier. Okay, I think it's a pretty good melee. It's solid, works well. You got some bleed, you want bleed, but I just think either stock or the basher is probably going to get you farther. If that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. We did it.
I'm proud of this tier list. I think it works.
I think it works too.
I think it fairly accurately reflects my opinions.